I want to tell you about radium.
A most peculiar and remarkable element because it does not behave as it should.
Yes. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Marie Curie, a pioneering scientist born in Poland, discovered groundbreaking elements like radium and polonium, which revolutionized our understanding of atoms and radioactivity. Her discoveries were monumental, leading to advancements in medical treatments and nuclear energy. But they also exposed her to deadly radiation, which ultimately caused her death. In America, radium took a darker turn as companies employed young women, known as the radium girls, to paint watch dials with the glowing substance, unknowingly poisoning themselves. Why did companies overlook the dangers of radium for so long? Let's investigate the harsh working environment these women had to endure due to neglection of their company. Marie Curie's double-edged discovery. Marie Curie was born in Warsaw, Poland in 1876 and later became one of the most famous scientists in history. She was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize and the first person ever to win it twice in physics and chemistry. She and her husband, Pierre Curie, discovered important elements like polonium, named after her homeland, and radium. These discoveries changed how scientists understood atoms and radioactivity. However, Marie Curie's passion for science came at a great cost. The radiation from the very elements she discovered eventually led to her death. She died from a disease called aplastic anemia at the age of 66, caused by her exposure to radiation. Her work, though, didn't go in vain. It led to the development of X-rays, treatments for cancer, and nuclear energy. The story of radium, one of the elements she discovered, doesn't end with Marie Curie. It took a darker turn in the early 20th century in America. Radium was used to make watch dials glow in the dark, a feature that was very popular at the time. Factories in places like Orange, New Jersey, and Ottawa, Illinois, started hiring young women to paint these watch dials by hand. These women, often referred to as the radium girls, were not aware of the dangers they were being exposed to. The companies they worked for knew that radium could be harmful, but hid this information from the workers. The women were even told to use their mouths to sharpen the paintbrushes, which meant they were ingesting small amounts of radium. The companies falsely claimed that radium had health benefits, convincing the workers that it was safe. Over time, the radium began to cause serious health problems for these women, including losing their teeth, severe jaw issues, and other painful conditions. The worst of these was known as radium jaw, a horrible disease where the jawbone starts to break down. Despite these severe health issues, it took a long time for everyone to realize they were caused by radium exposure. The plight of the radium girls eventually became known, and they decided to fight back. They took their employers to court, challenging the companies that had endangered their lives. These court battles were not just about getting justice for themselves. They also helped change the laws around labor safety and corporate responsibility. The story of radium serves as a stark reminder of the costs of scientific progress. It's a story about the incredible advances that can come from new discoveries, and about how important it is to protect the people who make these advances possible. It highlights the need for ethics in science and industry, showing that while discovering new things can be exciting and beneficial, it should not come at the expense of people's health. As we remember these stories, they remind us to always question and improve how we handle new knowledge and technology. The stories of radium being misused by companies are both shocking and eye-opening, showing us the harsh consequences people suffered before better work safety laws were put in place. In the past, radium was commonly used in products like watch dials, but after causing too much harm, its use is now limited to very specific areas like checking materials in industry using radiography. On another strange note, history has its share of incredibly odd tales, and Mary Toph's story stands out as particularly strange. In 1726, in the small English town of Godalming, Surrey, Mary became known for a bizarre claim. She said that after losing a baby, she began to give birth to rabbits. This claim confused and fascinated the local doctors. John Howard, a surgeon from her town, was drawn to Mary's case. He was so puzzled by her claims of rabbit births that he involved other doctors from around the country and even got the attention of the king's court. Among those who took an interest was Nathaniel St. Andre, a surgeon to King George I, who initially believed Mary's incredible story. This high-level endorsement made Mary's case famous nationwide, and she was brought to London for more people to study her. Despite the serious attention, the truth about her situation was shocking. It turned out Mary had been tricking everyone by putting rabbit parts inside herself and pretending to give birth to them. The reasons why Mary did this are still unclear. Was she seeking attention, trying to deal with her grief, or just interested in fooling people who should have known better? This revelation didn't just expose Mary's deception, it showed how easily even the most educated people could be fooled when faced with something extraordinary. Mary's actions and the initial belief in her claims by respected figures remind us of the ongoing battle between truth and sensationalism. Mary Toft's case, much like the tragic history of radium use, teaches us about the dangers of deception and the challenges in achieving progress. Both stories highlight the need for critical thinking. They show that advancements in understanding and regulations often come slowly and require us to constantly question and verify our beliefs and the information we are presented with. These tales from history not only entertain, but also educate us about human nature, our capacity for error, and the complex journey toward greater knowledge and better safeguards in society. In Renaissance Europe, there was a strange fascination with using powdered mummies as a cure for all sorts of illnesses. The mummy powder was highly prized and expensive. First, the powder came from real Egyptian mummies, which were ground into powder and sold in pharmacies. But as these mummies became harder to find because of high demand, Europeans started making their own mummies. They used the bodies of criminals, servants, and sometimes people who donated their bodies for the purpose. Some even resorted to less honest ways to get bodies to turn into mummies. Now, let's explore some of the strangest things people used to believe. The dark side of 19th century photography. Photography in the 19th century also had its dark side with post-mortem photography. Because many children didn't live long and photographs were rare, families would take pictures of their deceased loved ones as keepsakes. These photos were set up to make the dead look like they were just sleeping, often surrounded by flowers or holding favorite toys. But as cameras became more common and fewer children died young, this practice started to seem creepy and was mostly abandoned. During the Great Depression, people had to get really creative just to get by. They turned potato sacks into clothes and other household items because they couldn't afford to buy fabric. Kids who had to wear these sack clothes were often embarrassed and bullied for looking poor. This just shows how tough times can push people to reuse whatever they have in unexpected ways. Each of these strange tales from history not only shows how creative or desperate people can be, but also serves as a lesson in how not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Whether it's turning a warship into an ice cream maker or wearing poisonous colors, it's clear that sometimes people's choices can be as baffling as they are inventive. The reason Europeans used mummies this way was based on a big misunderstanding. They got the idea from the Arabs, who used a type of natural asphalt called bitumen for healing. The Europeans thought the black appearance of the Egyptian mummies was because they contained bitumen, not realizing it was actually the result of the embalming process used in mummification. They mistakenly believed that the mummies had special healing properties. As time went on and medical knowledge improved, the idea of using mummies in medicine lost its appeal. People began to see it as a strange and barbaric practice from a less informed time. On a different note, Genghis Khan, a name synonymous with conquest and destruction, also had an unexpected impact on the environment. His extensive military campaigns led to the deaths of around 40 million people, which drastically reduced the population in the areas he conquered. This reduction in human population meant that large areas of farmland were abandoned and eventually grew back into forests. These new forests absorbed a lot of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which some scientists believe might have had a noticeable effect on the world's climate. During World War II, the US Navy came up with a creative way to keep their sailors happy and motivated. They used ice cream. Understanding the importance of keeping up morale as much as achieving military success, the Navy went to great lengths to provide their servicemen with ice cream. They bought large quantities of milk powder and even converted some ships and barges into floating ice cream factories. This effort to provide a bit of comfort in the form of ice cream during the harsh conditions of war was a unique strategy to maintain a good spirit among the troops. These stories from history show the various ways humans have tried to solve problems, from the misinformed medical practices of the past to the accidental environmental benefits of military conquests and the innovative morale-boosting tactics during wartime. Each event offers a glimpse into the inventive and sometimes misguided endeavors. Each chapter from the past helps us understand more about how people thought and acted in their times, providing lessons and insights that are still relevant today. In the past, people came up with some pretty strange ideas, especially when you think about the USS Lexington. This was not just any ship, it was like a floating ice cream factory. Every day it could make enough ice cream for 5,000 people. Imagine in the middle of war, a ship that focuses so much on dessert. Even more bizarre, there were reports that another aircraft carrier was turned into a huge ice cream shop on the ocean, capable of whipping up 10 gallons of ice cream every 7 minutes. This kind of thing makes you wonder what the military was thinking, putting so much effort into something like ice cream. Back on land, things weren't any less odd. People in the 18th century were really scared of being buried alive because doctors often couldn't tell if someone was truly dead. They came up with safety coffins that had bells or flags that a not really dead person could use to alert others if they woke up buried. As medicine got better, these strange and gruesome practices eventually stopped. Dentistry back then was quite grim too. They used to make dentures from the teeth of soldiers who had died in battle, especially after battles like Waterloo. As sugar became more popular and ruined people's teeth, the rich ended up using these Waterloo teeth to replace their own. It's a stark reminder of how people would use even the dead to maintain appearances. In 1775, a new color burst onto the scene in Victorian society, quickly becoming the height of fashion. This color, known as Sheely's green and later as emerald green, was dazzlingly beautiful and was used to decorate everything from the walls of elegant drawing rooms to the latest fashions in gowns and even children's toys. The rich, lush green became a symbol of wealth and good taste. But this beautiful color hid a dark secret. It was made with arsenic, a deadly poison. Despite knowing about the dangers of arsenic, people in the Victorian era underestimated its risks when it came to something as seemingly harmless as a dye. The desire for this appealing green overrode common sense, leading to its widespread use. Homes were draped in fabrics dyed with it, walls were painted with it. The vibrant green was everywhere, signaling both the technological advancements of the age and a disturbing oversight regarding public health. Next, we dive into some unexpected stories and their effects. When Edison's dolls spoke in ghostly tones, realizing the dangers posed by arsenic-laden pigments came only with the progress of science and public health understanding at the dawn of the 20th century. By then, the shift to safer dyes had begun, slowly phasing out the once celebrated arsenic greens. Today, these items are still sought after by collectors around the world who value their historical significance but are well aware of the need to handle them carefully due to their toxic nature. Alongside this tale of dangerous beauty is the incredible story of Tsutomu Yamaguchi, a man who bore witness to one of history's greatest tragedies, not once but twice and by sheer chance. In 1945, Yamaguchi was in Hiroshima for work when the United States dropped the first atomic bomb. He was just a few kilometers away from where the bomb exploded. Though he was severely injured, he survived the initial devastation, which was a horrifying experience marked by chaos and destruction. Believing he had escaped the worst, Yamaguchi returned to his hometown to recover. His hometown was Nagasaki, which just 3 days after Hiroshima was struck by a second atomic bomb. Yamaguchi was at work, recounting the horrors he had seen to his boss when the bomb hit. The coincidence was both shocking and surreal. Surviving not one, but 2 atomic bombings seemed almost beyond belief. Yamaguchi's story is a stark reminder of the randomness of survival in such catastrophic events. His life stands as a testament to the unpredictability and cruelty of war, where individual fates are irrevocably altered by forces far beyond their control. Through these narratives, one of a toxic dye that permeated everyday life under the guise of beauty, and another of a man caught twice in the crossfire of nuclear war, we see how the threads of history are woven from both human folly and the sheer unpredictability of life. These stories, while separated by context, together paint a picture of a past that is both richly colored and shadowed by the consequences of human actions. Nagasaki, despite his injuries, he continued to search for his family, who thankfully also survived the bombing. Tsutomu Yamaguchi's life changed dramatically after he survived 2 atomic bombings in Japan during World War II. These experiences led him to dedicate his life to advocating against nuclear weapons. He wanted the world to remember the terrible power of these weapons and worked tirelessly to promote a future where they would never be used again. Yamaguchi's efforts were fueled by his personal memories of destruction and suffering, making him a passionate and influential voice in the fight for nuclear disarmament. In another eerie part of history, there are books that exist which are bound in human skin. This practice, known as anthropodermic bibliopagy, is as rare as it is macabre. One infamous example is a book that covers the subject of anatomy bound in the skin of William Burke, who was part of the notorious Burke and Hare duo. They were known for murdering 16 people in the 19th century to sell their bodies for medical research. After Burke was executed, his skin was used to cover a book on anatomy, the very field that his heinous acts had supported. This grim artifact highlights a dark intersection of crime, science, and morality. Thomas Edison, a name synonymous with innovation, once ventured into the world of children's toys with an idea that was ahead of its time, but ultimately unsettling. He created dolls that could talk by incorporating his phonograph technology into them. These dolls were designed to recite nursery rhymes, intended to bring joy and wonder to children. However, the reality was quite different. The technology of the time couldn't produce clear sound, and the dolls' voices ended up sounding ghostly and distorted. Furthermore, the dolls themselves were made with metal bodies and wax heads, making them more fragile and eerie than cuddly. This venture into toys did not last long, as the unsettling nature of the dolls made them unpopular, and the project was deemed a failure. The Great Emu War is another strange but true story from history. During the Great Depression in 1932, Australia faced an unexpected problem. Thousands of emus were destroying crops. In response, the military was deployed to control the birds using weapons. However, the emus were surprisingly difficult to manage, dodging the soldiers' efforts with ease. What was meant to be a straightforward mission turned into a humorous but embarrassing spectacle. The emus evaded capture and control, leaving the soldiers frustrated and the public amused. This incident is often remembered as a bizarre example of how unpredictable and uncontrollable nature can be, and how even well-planned military operations can go awry when facing the unexpected resilience of wildlife. In Western Australia during a severe economic downturn, farmers at the lower end of society were struggling immensely. Not only were these farmers battling financial hardships, unable to even provide food for their tables, but they also faced an unexpected natural crisis. An enormous flock of emus, Australia's largest native birds, began to invade their farmlands. These birds, towering up to 6 feet and capable of running at 30 miles per hour, wreaked havoc on the wheat crops just when the farmers were at their most vulnerable. The farmers, many of whom had experienced the horrors of World War I, decided to tackle the problem with a military strategy. They approached the government, which agreed to deploy the military in what would come to be known as an almost comedic spectacle. Led by Major G.P.W. Meredith in his 7th Heavy Battery of the Royal Australian Artillery, the troops arrived with 10,000 rounds of ammunition. However, the mission to control the emus turned into a fiasco. The birds were not only resilient, but proved to be incredibly elusive. Even when targeted, they managed to escape with minimal harm, scattering across the fields only to regroup and continue their destruction elsewhere. Moving on, get ready for love stories, mysteries, and odd conflicts. America's first serial killer's castle of horrors. Meanwhile, in the bustling, opportunity-rich city of Chicago in the late 19th century, H.H. Holmes took advantage of the growing city in a sinister way. Holmes, known as one of America's first serial killers, was a con artist and a bigamist who built a hotel that was a front for his murderous activities. The hotel was designed to trap and confuse guests, featuring over 60 rooms arranged in a confusing maze, with doors that led to brick walls and staircases going nowhere. Secret passages and chutes led to a horror-filled basement equipped with tools for murder and disposal of bodies, including a dissecting table, a crematorium, and acid baths. Holmes's victims met gruesome ends. Some were gassed in their rooms, controlled by Holmes, while others were trapped in soundproof rooms where they died of starvation or thirst. These tales highlight the darker side of human actions, driven by intense emotions, ambition, or malice. They remind us of the lengths people can go to under the sway of powerful motivations, whether it's preserving a loved one's memory, establishing new frontiers, or indulging in criminal acts. Each story not only stirs our imagination, but also invites us to reflect on the complex and sometimes frightening aspects of human behavior. The story of H.H. Holmes is a curious glimpse into the oddities of criminal justice. Despite being responsible for the deaths of possibly over 100 people, Holmes wasn't caught for murder. Instead, it was something as trivial as horse theft that brought him to the authorities' attention in 1894. Following his arrest, it took 2 long years before he was finally tried and executed, highlighting the sometimes slow and bizarre focus of law enforcement. Meanwhile, in the 1830s, ketchup was being sold as a magical health remedy. A man named Archibald Miles introduced this idea with what he called Dr. Miles' compound extract of tomato, claiming it could cure a variety of illnesses like stomach aches, yellow skin, and joint pain. This claim led to a strange period when ketchup was touted as a medical solution, and other companies quickly jumped on the bandwagon. They promised that their ketchup could cure nearly anything, even making bald people grow hair or treating foot fungus. These claims heavily relied on people's hope rather than any scientific proof. Although tomatoes do contain beneficial nutrients such as vitamins A and C and lycopene, which has several health advantages, these were greatly exaggerated when claimed as treatments. It wasn't until the Pure Food Act of 1906 that such wild claims were controlled and ketchup was finally acknowledged just as a food condiment. On another historical note, we turn to the medieval tale of Dom Pedro, the first of Portugal, also known as Pedro the Cruel or Pedro the Just, depending on one's viewpoint. Pedro was embroiled in a scandalous affair with Inés de Castro, a lady-in-waiting to his wife who came from the Castilian nobility. The affair was not a discreet one. It was widely known and stirred much gossip and significant political unrest. Inés's influence over Pedro was seen as a threat to the stability of the kingdom, as it hinted at a possible alliance with Castile. King Afonso IV, Pedro's father, viewed his son's romance with great alarm, not through the lens of a concerned father, but as a monarch fearing for his political power. In a drastic measure cloaked in the justification of protecting the crown, Afonso ordered the assassination of Inés in 1355. This act not only brought an end to the romance, but also plunged the kingdom into a state of political intrigue and personal tragedy. Pedro was devastated by the loss of Inés, who was killed by his father's command, marking his reign with a tragic blend of love, betrayal, and political maneuvering. This story, rich with the complexities of human emotions and power, remains a poignant chapter in the annals of Portuguese history. Pedro's love for Inés was deep and stubborn. He believed so strongly in keeping her memory alive that he took extraordinary steps after becoming king. He shocked everyone by announcing that he and Inés had secretly married, making her the rightful queen of Portugal, even though she had already passed away. But Pedro didn't stop there. In a bold and eerie move, he had Inés's body dug up, dressed in queenly robes, and placed on a throne. He then ordered the high society of Portugal to pay respects and kiss the hand of Inés, treating her as if she were still alive. This dark tribute was a dramatic mix of love and a display of power, dressed up as a romantic act. Contrasting with this love-driven spectacle is the baffling story of the Roanoke colony, which was meant to be the first permanent English settlement in North America. The plan for this new colony was ambitious, but it ended in a mysterious disaster. John White, the colony's governor, went back to England to gather supplies shortly after establishing Roanoke. His return was unexpectedly delayed by 3 years. When he finally came back in 1590, he discovered that the entire colony had disappeared without a trace. The houses were taken apart, and there was no sign of violence or hurried departure. The only clue left behind was the word Croatoan, carved into a wooden post, and Crow on a tree. Some thought the colonists might have joined the Croatan, a nearby Native American tribe, but no evidence was ever found to support this. The fate of the Roanoke settlers remains a puzzle to this day, sparking endless curiosity and speculation. Let's analyze the personal struggles and mistakes that also shape history. The shadows behind Marilyn Monroe's spotlight. The tragic life of Marilyn Monroe is another story of how fame doesn't guarantee happiness. Monroe, an iconic figure in film, had a very public life filled with glamour. However, beneath that, she faced a lot of personal struggles. After losing her parents at a young age, she was left to fend for herself. And even though her acting career provided her with financial support, it also left her vulnerable to exploitation. Her life, even today, is often surrounded by mystery and false stories, showing how fame can distort the truth and does not always lead to personal fulfillment. The Salem witch trials are a profound example of how fear and superstition can lead to irrational and deadly outcomes. In those times, simple acts like making a sarcastic remark or slamming a church door could get someone accused of witchcraft. These accusations could be based on nothing more than community panic or personal vendettas, reflecting how fear could manipulate societies into committing acts of great injustice. The trials were less about actual evidence of witchcraft and more about controlling or punishing people through fear, showcasing a dark chapter in human history where logic and reason were abandoned. Each of these stories, from Holmes's bizarre escape from murder charges to the medical misadventures with ketchup, Marilyn Monroe's troubled life under the spotlight, and the mass hysteria of the Salem witch trials, illustrate different aspects of human society. They show how justice can sometimes miss the mark, how health fads can overshadow scientific reason, how fame can be both a blessing and a curse, and how fear can drive a community to commit severe acts of injustice. Together, they offer a glimpse into the complexities and often the absurdities of human behavior throughout history. Back in 1692 in Salem, a place full of very strict religious people called Puritans, life was filled with fear of witches. In this time, something as simple as being different or a kid saying you acted like a witch could get you into big trouble. The Puritans really believed that witches were real and dangerous. The witch trials started when some young girls said they were being hurt by invisible forces, like being pinched or bitten. They blamed several women in their town, saying these women were using witchcraft on them. This started a huge wave of panic, and suddenly many people were being accused of being witches. Among the first to be accused were Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and another woman whose name wasn't fully recorded. It was a terrifying time. You could be accused just because someone said they saw a ghost that looked like you doing bad things. The situation was completely out of control. In total, more than 200 people ended up being accused of doing witchcraft. 19 of these people were hanged, one was crushed to death under heavy stones, and several others died while they were locked up in jail. People were very quick to blame others for any bad things that happened, often saying it was the work of witches. The courts at the time didn't really look for real evidence. They often used something called spectral evidence, which meant they believed the accusers even when they said they saw ghosts or had visions. This wasn't a fair way to decide if someone was really a witch. It was more about getting rid of people who seemed strange or scary to them. The whole thing shows how scared and superstitious people were back then. They let their fears control them, and it led to a lot of innocent people suffering. The Salem witch trials are remembered as a sad story about what happens when fear takes over a community. It's a reminder of how important it is to use reason and fairness instead of letting fear and superstition decide people's fates. This dark part of history helps us understand the power of fear and how it can make people do terrible things to each other. It's a lesson on why we need to think carefully and treat everyone fairly, no matter how scared we might be. The events at Salem teach us to be better at handling our fears and not let them lead us into hurting others. What historical fact disturbs you the most? And do you think these horrible practices still happen in our modern world? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit like and subscribe for more shocking history.